where I play, as long as I go number one in the draft.
From the Erie Otters, Conor Mcdavid.
From the London Knights, Mitch Marner.
From the Western Hockey League's Brandon Wheat Kings, Nolan Patrick.
This is Tracking the Draft with Craig Button.
He checks an enormous amount of boxes. Nobody in this draft did more with less. I absolutely love him. It's not his skills that anybody's concerned about. It's that playing attitude. And quite frankly, it's really poor.
Speeding towards the future of the NHL.
From the U.S. Development Program, Jacob Truba.
From Färjestad of the Swedish Elite League, Jonas Brodin.
From the Boston U Terriers, Brady Tkachuk.
He could play in the NHL next year. He's one of those guys.
Here's your host, Dean Millard.
Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Tracking the Draft with Craig Button, the Director of Scouting for TSN. Will be along very shortly. This is Season 2, Episode 21, where the stars of tomorrow are discovered and discussed, and we are proudly broadcasting on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. Give them a follow on Twitter at UFS Network, and check out www.uffsports.com for more information. If you have a fantasy sports podcast, they would love to hear from you. We would love for you to join us here on the network. It is absolutely so much fun. Today's episode is going to be a lot of fun as well. Last week it was the NHL Bloodlines edition. Today it's the Under 18 edition, because our good friend Craig Button will be calling the games with Brian Mudryk. Brian Mudryk will be doing play-by-play, and Craig will be providing color analysis, or be the color analyst, rather. And I can't wait to see some of these players. You know, some of these players that I will be definitely looking at drafting in the UFHL draft, and NHL teams are obviously getting to look at some of these players. And this has been such a strange year for so many different hockey players, particularly the prospects. Here are some of the players we're going to be chatting about today. Francesco Pinelli, a forward who played in the Alps AHL. And I didn't know about this league until Craig told me. Ruby ISS Scouting grabbed this guy at $65. So nice price to pay for that NFT. As a guy who you'll find out where he projects, whether he's a first rounder or beyond. So Ruby ISS hoping that pays off for them down the road. Brett Harrison played for Kuvi U20. He's with Spitfire Scouting. They claimed this NFT for $35, winning him in the auction, and we'll tell you how this forward will work out with Canada, where he expects to fit in with Team Canada, as well as moving forward. And Conor Roulette, Prestige Worldwide, just $30 they paid for this prospect. And, you know, if Conor Roulette has a really strong tournament and shoots up the rankings, that's going to make Prestige Worldwide some good coin for sure. Craig joins us on the UFFS hotline. Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports is the future. Check out the brand new website, www.uffsports.com. You can become a scout. You can track the same players that Craig Button does. In this format, you own the game, so get in the game. Scout real-world players and then sell them to fantasy franchises. And when I say sell, you could make some good money. Two guys just spent $10,000 US on a expansion franchise in this league. So there is a lot of money to go around, and if you find the right prospects, you could be getting some of that money for yourself, as well as the prestige of being a scout on this platform. All right, speaking of scouts, let's get to the president of high-level scouting in the UFHL and the director of scouting with TSN, Mr. Craig Button.
Here he is, the Director of Scouting for TSN, former GM of the Calgary Flames, and a Stanley Cup champion with the Dallas Stars. Plus, he's a sharp-dressed man with a heart of gold and a passion to match it. Craig Button.
Okay, Craig, the World Under-18s are just about upon us. They start next week, and I know you're going to be there, part of the broadcast on TSN, so I can't wait to see you calling those games with your crew. Who are the crew that's going to be with you at the U18s this year?
Well, Brian Mudryk is going to do the play-by-play, and he's done it for the last number of years, and obviously the voice of the Montreal Canadiens on the regional Habs broadcast. But, a real strong history calling the tournament and great excitement having seen these players and knowing the tournament really extremely well. So it's always a lot of fun. And, and what you're looking at, Dean, is real straightforward. You're looking at the future of the NHL. That's what you're looking at. And that makes it exciting as well. You can look and you can say, geez, Dylan Holloway signs his first NHL contract. He was at the U18. And Cole Caulfield has the record for most goals, tied with Alexander Ovechkin for most goals in a tournament. He's ready to turn pro or be an NHLer. Spencer Knight, who just won his first NHL game on Tuesday night. That was the future a few seasons ago. And this year will be the future in seasons ahead.
Yeah, indeed. And Muddy is a great guy. It's funny. Brian Mudryk, Jamie Thomas, and I all worked weekends at the same time in Edmonton. So there was a few late nights after our newscast that we would go out and, research and compare notes after doing the weekend. So you're in really good hands. Brian is truly, like you said, a great guy and a lot of passion with his college. He's worked really hard to get to where he is.
Oh, he sure has. And, like you said, he's simply terrific. There's no other way to put it.
All right, so we're going to get to some players for Canada that are going to suit up for their respective country at the U18s. But just who are a few players that you're looking forward to seeing that are 2021 draft eligible that won't be wearing the Maple Leaf?
Oh, I'm not looking at any other players other than the Canadian players. Are there any other players that play the game outside of Canada?
No, there's not. No.
Well, I don't think there is. I mean, I got asked a question the other day, do you just look at a specific region? In Canada, one province over another. It was around the discussion of Patrick Marleau. And I said, well, I guess you can, but just understand that you're going to narrow yourself down into nowhere where there's just not enough players. So you have to have a worldwide view of this, and certainly that's what the draft does. I will say this, Dean. Next Tuesday, Canada is going to play Sweden. And my estimation of that game is that there will be at least 12 first-rounders in that game and maybe 14 or 15.
Wow.
Because, we'll go through some of the Canadian players, but, Fabian Lysell, Simon Edvinsson, Isaac Rosen, really Simon Robertson, really good players. William Stromgren is another player that's right there, probably on the cusp of the first round, if not clearly in it. So I just named 5 Swedes. And I think there's 8 or 9, maybe 10 Canadians that fall into that category. And so you tune into the game next Tuesday with Canada and Sweden. It becomes quite impressive with respect to, the quality of talent, the quality of player that is going to be available there. And, when I guess it's not fair to not talk about the Canadian kids, but we're going to talk about a couple of them on this show here. But I mean, Corson Sulemans is a first-round pick, and Brant Clark is a first-round pick, and there's no question that those guys are going to find themselves. Cole Sillinger's a first-round draft pick. Carson Lambos and his health situation is he got hurt in the Regina bubble. So he's a little bit up in the air as far as I know at this point in time. But, we're talking the first round of the NHL draft is going to be on display. That could be just about half of the first round in one game. In one game, you tune in and you can see half of the first round. Pretty impressive is what I would say.
That is going to be awesome. And one of those guys that we're talking about today is Francesco Pinelli, a forward who is playing this year with Jesenice in the Alps AHL. I don't exactly know where that is, but I do know that Ruby ISS snagged this NFT for $65. It's interesting. His brother Luca, he's already listed on the platform by Brennan Kopp. So UFFS scouts get to these guys years before the big leagues do in all sports. But we're talking about Francesco today, and these three guys that we're talking about today will all be in Texas. So I want to ask you, what should fans and scouts be watching for with Francesco wearing a Canadian uniform at the U18s?
Okay, I'm going to take one step back to just tell you what the Alps Hockey League is.
Yes, please.
So it's a league where Austrian players play. Some German, some Swiss players. The Swiss has a really good junior league, and what's happened is in that region of around Austria, Slovakia, in that area, Hungary, they've created this Alps Hockey League where players in that area can go and play, and the competition is pretty significant, for that region. And if you go back to the World Junior Tournament and you look at Austria and you look at players that played and where they played, a number of them were playing in the Alps Hockey League. So just to give you a sense of where that league is from. So there. Now, let's go on to Francesco Pinelli. So what, you always, it's always an interesting question when you ask me, what can fans expect? Here's a little way I would reframe that in my own words, is what can fans look for? Mm-hmm. And what you're going to see in Francesco is a player that's really a player of really good, smart playing in all areas of the game. There's not this flash to his game. There's not this, end-to-end rushes or this, this brilliant standalone skill. But, he gets himself invested in the game with the puck, without the puck, offensively, shooting it, defensively, defending hard. And he has a real, what I would call a real completeness to his game. And so how many times, Dean, do we talk about players? Oh, they got to work on that play without the puck. Yeah, all players have to work on their play without the puck. But Francesco is a player that seems to have that part of his game just a little bit more advanced, a little bit more developed. And for that reason, what you can look for is a player that Dave Barr and the coaching staff are going to be able to use in a lot of different scenarios. Penalty killing, key defensive zone faceoffs, offensive zone play, holding the puck, possessing the puck, being a player that the opposition is going to have a tough time getting the puck from. And he may even be a player that they swing to the left wing. And this tournament is really interesting as well, because when you get the best players, sometimes you got to take those players and have them play in different positions than what would be considered their natural positions. It's another challenge for the scouts. You're assessing players perhaps not in their natural position, but in a position that they got to play on this team. And that's just another aspect of evaluation for this tournament. But, when I've watched Francesco, you continue to find yourself, geez, who made that play? Who started that play? Oh, where did that play emanate from? And, it circles right back to Francesco Pinelli, because he has a lot of those elements in his game that are really important to success. And not just for the team, but when you look at where other players are able to have success, you see a player in Pinelli who can contribute to that. So a really smart, competitive, well-rounded player is what I would suggest you can look for from Francesco Pinelli.
You mentioned being able to, work on your play away from the puck like every player has to do. And every player probably can always improve, maybe other than that McDavid guy and a few others, but on their skating. What do you like about him getting around the ice? And maybe what should, scouts in the UFHL that are looking at this player be watching for when he is skating up and down the ice?
Well, I'm going to go to the second part of this too. And, when you ask me about the UFHL, what they should be looking for, and you mentioned Conor McDavid. Conor McDavid is a better skater today than he was when he was in his draft year in 2015. and he was an exceptional skater. So, you say that, but it's because every single one of these players in the draft has a road of improvement ahead, just simply because of maturation. Simply because your body's going to be able to have more strength. And with more strength, you're going to have more power. And with more power, you're going to be able to skate faster. You're going to be more explosive. You're going to be able to shoot the puck harder. Conor McDavid, it was really interesting in his draft year, Dean. I think I marked his shot as a 2.5, which is average. And, how can I shoot? Well, because he never had to use his shot, because he skated around everybody and he found his way in and around the net to score goals. But as you move to the NHL, you develop your shot. You understand how your shot can be more effective and, work with your skating to keep defenders at bay. You watch Connor McDavid shoot the puck now. Connor McDavid has a very good shot. It was always accurate, but now it's quick, and now it's off his stick. And, Connor talks about being with Austin Matthews in the summer, working on the release. So, Connor McDavid's all of 24 years of age, and he's still improving. So these players, just with maturation, are going to improve. So when you ask me how he gets around the ice, Francesco Pinelli, that is, what I would say is his skating is good, very good. I don't think it's going to ever be outstanding and exceptional. But if we look at skaters in the NHL, how many exceptional skaters are there in the NHL? There's Connor McDavid and there's Nathan McKinnon and there's a number of them. I'm not trying to, but where you fall in, there's different. If Francesco Pinelli's skating was on the Connor McDavid level, we'd be talking about him in the top 3-4 picks of the draft. Right. But it isn't. So that's where he sits. But it's one element. And then you ask yourself, what's the element in that regard? How does it impact the rest of his game? How does it fit in with the hockey sense? How does it fit in with the puck handling skills and the different elements? It's never about one skill. And it never can be about one skill. It's got to be the skills within the entire package of skills and the array of skills. And you've heard me say this many times. I see a lot of players that are great skaters that go nowhere fast, and they get someplace that has no meaning. And other players that might not be around, but might not have as much flash or as much dash. But boy, they're always right in the middle of things. They're always in the right places at the right times, and you can't check them and everything. And so I would suggest that Francesco, if I was projecting him, I would project him as probably a number 2 at best center, and at the very least, and least is probably not the right way to put it, but a number 3 center. And I think that the qualities that he brings to the game are of NHL caliber, and I think the approach he has to the game are ones that are desirable to NHL teams.
Yeah, and I look at a prospect, and as long as you tell me a certain skill set isn't going to be a massive detriment to his development, I'm okay. And you can work with a lot of things like that, right? So where do you see, is this, you mentioned a lot of first-rounders in that game next Tuesday. Do you look at Francesco as being a first-round pick this year, a top 9 forward for a team that could possibly play in the top 6?
Well, I do. I see him as a first-round draft pick. I don't know where he fits. I see him as an NHL player. And you're drafting guys that have a greater indication of NHL potential than less. And the players that don't demonstrate or haven't been able to demonstrate to the same extent as others, they're the guys that get drafted a little bit later down in the draft, whether it be the 2nd or 3rd or the 4th round. Players like Francesco Pinelli, they've demonstrated more of those attributes, which to me makes them first rounders. To me, he's not a top 15 pick, but he might be shortly there right after. So I'd see him as a second half of the first round, based on the other players that I feel have a little bit better potential.
There we go. All right, let's move on to Brett Harrison, a forward who played with Kuvi, the U20 program with SM Sarja. Spitfire Scouting has this NFT for $35, and we'll start with the same question. What should scouts be watching for with this player at this particular tournament?
Well, a good, solid, competitive winger. And, Nick Foligno got traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and there was a lot of talk about what's Nick Foligno? What type of player is he? Where does he fit in on your team and everything that goes with it, right? And nobody brings up scoring. Nobody brings up high-end offensive abilities, but they talk about how a player like that can help other players, get opportunities and get space, and how you have to be smart to be able to play with those types of players. And that's Brett. Brett is he's going to play in traffic. He's going to be very good in the body-on-body battles. He's going to win loose pucks, and when he gets those loose pucks, he knows what to do with the puck. He's smart. He's got good hands, and he knows where the play needs to go to next. He knows where he needs to go to next to make an impact, and he's really, really competitive. And so when you start to look at a player of that ilk, I see him as a player that will help others, produce offense. But he himself I don't see him as a big offensive producer. I see him as a player that's going to, and maybe Nick Foligno is the right comparison for him going into this draft, because he has a lot of those elements and he has a lot of those qualities that make good teams better and make good players, even great players, a little bit more comfortable playing, knowing that they're going to get some space carved out for them, and the battles that they're going to go win for the puck, they're going to receive the puck in the right spots. And those are players that I call important for your team and important for your other top end players, and that's what I see in Brett Harrison.
Yeah, sounds like a really balanced two-way forward that maybe isn't going to, tee him up from the top of the circles or undress guys, but, could be that third assist, those guys that really do so much of the work on the play but don't get as much credit, or, get some goals the hard way. I'm trying not to sell his offense too short, but do you see him as that type of player that's going to be involved in the play but maybe doesn't get as much credit on the stat sheet?
I'm really happy you brought this whole, to me, you brought this all together here, okay? So number one, you say I'm not trying to sell his offensive capability short. What you have to do in scouting is sell the player for what you think he can be. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of times NHL teams make this mistake all the time. They overproject a player. They look at a player and say he can be this. And instead of just saying, hey, listen, you know what? This is what he is. That's the essence of scouting, is seeing things that are clearly of NHL caliber, and then saying, this is what he can be really, really good at, and we're going to be really, really happy with it. Dean, you've watched junior hockey forever and a day. How many 50 goal scores in junior, 100-point scores in junior that were that good in junior, never couldn't score 50 goals in 4 seasons in the NHL? It's dotted, right? So a player like Brett Harrison, it's not a knock to say he doesn't have offense. It's not a knock to say you're not trying to. It's just being accurate in your assessment. And then to the second part of your comment, which is really important, is there's other elements. And I use the quote, everything that matters can't be measured, and everything that's measured doesn't necessarily matter. And you better keep that in mind because there's a lot of players that do nothing, put up numbers or goals and really don't help your team be very good. And there's other players that might not put up the same numbers, but are really important to your team's success.
Yeah, those 50, 60 goal scorers, 120-point guys, leagues are full of them around the world that are not called the NHL. And they were good junior players, but just did not, transform that or, take that to the next level. And so that's just a situation that is always important for people that are judging players to not just go by the stat line, because a lot of not all junior programs or college programs or whatever program a player comes from are equal. So when we talk about Brett, is he knocking on the door of the first round? Is he in that top 40 for you? Is he outside of that top 40? What do you think?
Oh, I would probably say that he is. I don't see him as a first-round draft pick, to be straightforward with you.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean he won't be. So he probably fits. Like and you've heard me say this, and it's never wrong to continue to say it, and I won't hesitate to say it. I really believe players in the 21 to 40, 45 range are all the same player.
Right.
And we know that the 33rd player won't be considered a first-round pick, and we know that the 25th player won't be considered a second-round pick. I put them all in the same category. They're all the same. A team could pick a player 42nd, and you'll hear about, we had him rated 22, or we would have taken him in the first round, right? And so that's where I put Brett Harrison.
All righty. Well, Craig joins us every week courtesy of the Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports Hotline. Scouting is a huge part of the platform, and it's the lifeblood of franchises in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. You aren't just scouting fantasy players. You're real-world scouting, and those players get auctioned off by franchises, and you get the glory, and you get the cash that comes with it. You can be an independent scout. You can form a partnership with an existing franchise. Check out www.uffsports.com, brand new website for all the information. Get in the game where you own the game in the Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports platform. All right, let's go back to the World Juniors a little bit, but talk about a couple of guys not eligible for 2021. We're going to get to Conor Roulette in a second, but Connor Bedard, speaking of Connors, there's a lot of Connors on this show today, 2023 eligible. Do you see him, this is a guy who's just tore it up in the Regina bubble, exceptional status for people that maybe don't know. Do you think he can play a top 6? Can he play a top 3 role on this team? Or does his age and maybe lack of experience, for a better word, prevent him from running up that lineup? Where do you see Connor Bedard fitting in on this team?
I have to tell you why I'm laughing, right? Do you know why I'm laughing?
No, I don't.
Because you played the card that I always laugh at, right? You go, because of his age. Okay, if you want to look at his birth certificate,
sure.
If you want to look at his height and weight, okay, go ahead, make your judgments, okay? Like, Dean, he was one of the very best players, if not the best player in the Regina bubble. And you're asking me if he can play a top 6 role on this team? You asked me because of his age, will he be pushed down? Only if people want to be stupid. Only if you want to not put your good players out there because you're looking at a birth certificate. Connor Bedard's a top-notch player. Full stop. Like, do I expect him to be a frontline player for Team Canada? Yeah, I do. Him and Shane Wright, because they're that good. They are smart. They are competitive. They understand how to play the game in all its manners. And quite frankly, I don't see very many players that are as gifted or as talented as them. Dylan Gunther qualifies. Okay, who else up front? Oh, maybe nobody.
All right, so I'm going to take it that you think he can play that. And you mentioned Shane Wright, and certainly high-level scouting is really excited about Shane Wright because he's in the stable of players that we think could go first in 2022. And Duckman's domination, if we're in that bubble, will be bidding on that. Now, he hasn't played all year. Do you temper expectations for him at the start of this tournament? Or do you think he'll be able to come out with some exhibition and some practices and be right top-notch?
Top-notch, no question about it. You may not have played games, and that's certainly the case with Shane Wright and some other players, but you're working on other areas of your game, and you're preparing, and you're training, and you're working on different elements outside of playing games. But when the players get back out on the ice and they practice and they get back into the rhythm and they start working on the precision of their game, and then they start playing the games, I don't think it'll take Shane Wright very long, if long at all is the right word. I think it'll take him a very short time to get back up to speed. When I was in the World Junior, not the bubble, but in Red Deer prior to the World Junior when Canada first started, I was really interested to see, Dean, how long it would take the players to get up to speed, so to speak. And I remember watching the first drill, the very, very first drill in the day, and there was no dipping a toe in the water. And Shane Wright was right in the middle of it. He was doing a back pressure drill, and he was right fully invested on it. There was no lack of competitiveness, because the competitive fires that these players have are always burning. All you got to do is just turn up the burner when you put them out on the ice, and then they start to burn hot. And that's exactly what it is with Shane Wright. And then as I watched him over the time there, I mean, yeah, you're talking about other good players, and we know what ended up happening with the quarantine and everything that happened, and it impacted Shane and some other players. But he's a top-notch player. He's exceptionally gifted with his skills. His brain is absolutely one of the very best right now in junior hockey anywhere, of any player of any age. And so when I watch him and think about him coming to this team, I have no question in my mind, nada, that he will be a frontline player, an important player. And I'm not so sure he won't be the captain of this team.
That's awesome. I'll tell Trish. She'll be really excited about that.
He was a captain at the U17, Dean.
Right.
So at U17, he came to that tournament. He was 15 years old. They have 3 teams in Canada, 63 players, and they have Shane was the captain of his team as a 15-year-old at the U17 tournament, which is 16-year-old. He was a year younger than everybody. And it goes back to what I said about Conor Bedard. If you're a leader, you're a leader. And it doesn't matter what your birth certificate says. If you're a top-end player, it doesn't matter what your birth certificate says. It says you go and demonstrate through your actions where you fit and how good a player you are and how good a leader you are. Conor Bedard is a top-notch player. Shane Wright is a top-notch player and a top-notch leader. So when I say he very well could be the captain of this team, it's not because he was given an exceptional status. It's because he's an exceptional leader.
And it kind of reminds me of a story you told one time about the Brooks Bandits bringing in, was it Corson Kuhlman, where they were going to bring him in? And they said, this is a young player, and all the players were like, yeah, if he helps us win, who cares? And I guess that's the mentality you have, especially in a short tournament. I don't care if you're 6'10" or 4'2", if you're 15, if you're 17, if you're 18. If you're going to help us win and you qualify for the tournament, you're going to be a valuable part of that team. And that's what athletes at that highest level and all athletes should be thinking of.
Well, Dean, how often do we hear the word culture? We got to create a culture. We got to create. Ryan Papuano, who's been in Brooks for a long time, general manager and coach, I'll tell you, when you know you have the right culture, you know that you have built an environment that is all about excellence. When, number one, the coach isn't just doing things without input from his key players and his leadership group, but he also knows that the leadership group is going to be honest with him, and they're going to offer an opinion that allows the team to be the best they can be. It was great, okay? Corson Sulemans was there. They won the national championship, which was wonderful, right? But Ryan Papuano and the players that he brought in there have created that environment and that culture. And that's when you know you have success, when they go, yeah, we know it might be difficult, but if he gives us a chance to win, and we know that he does, we'll deal with the other part of this. That is what teams in any sport are trying to do. Ryan Papuano has done it exceptionally well in Brooks.
Indeed. All right, let's get to Conner Roulette, forward with Seattle in the Western Hockey League. This NFT was bid on and won by Prestige Worldwide at $30. And when you look at the U18s and the lineup, what kind of a player? Is this a guy who might play a similar role he does in Seattle, or maybe a different role than he does in Seattle?
Well, in Seattle, he's played in different spots, around the lineup, up and down, through different areas of the team, and so right away, that's versatility, right? That's ability to adapt. And playing for Team Canada in any international tournament, you want players that not only are willing to adapt, but are capable of adapting because they understand what adapting means in terms of what they're going to have to do in those different areas. And certainly Conor, qualifies in that regard. When I look at Conor, he's a player that I think can go down the lineup and forecheck and be a catalyst type player. You can use him in penalty killing situations. Ask him to contribute some offense, from that spot in the lineup. And I look at like Connor Zary. Connor Zary, who I love, is just such a good, smart player that to me you can play anywhere. He was a top scorer in the Western Hockey League. And, then he goes to the World Junior team. And, all I know is this, they kept finding a place for Connor Zary. Why did they keep finding a place for Connor Zary? Because Connor Zary showed that he could play wherever you needed him. And I think Conor Roulette has some of those similar qualities, and for a coach, he gives you that comfort that, okay, we can put him here. And keep in mind, Dean, there's a lot of players that say, yeah, I'm willing to do it, but do they embrace it? Do they get invested in it? I don't have any question that Conor does get invested in those different areas. You're in your draft year, and the players want to be at their very best every single shift, every single game, and that's not realistic as well. And young players have to be forgiving of themselves. You didn't have the best game you had. That doesn't mean you're not going to be a good player, but at the same time, recognizing and being comfortable with who you are, and just say, this is my game. Either you're going to like it or you're not. You're going to pick it apart or you're going to love the different areas or the different parts of it. I try to say and express to young players, you know what? There's always going to be scouts that like you. There's always going to be scouts that don't like you as much as other scouts. Don't worry about it. Just play your game. That's easier said than done, but that's the advice I try to, convey to the young players. And because a lot of players are, I got to score. I got to do this. I got to. Well, yeah, okay. Some scouts are only going to recognize that. That's okay. But does that mean does that mean you're not going to be a good NHL player because you didn't do it? No. And other scouts are going to recognize it and celebrate it. And that's what you're trying to do is show, the real significant elements of your game that will allow you to be an NHL player. I think Conor is a two-way forward that's going to play down your lineup. He's another one that needs that physical maturity and everything that goes with it. But like all the players, but I think his skill set is one that says, okay, I'm going to play a little bit deeper in the lineup. But what I can do can be significant. I can be a significant contributor to the team and help them be successful.
All right, I'm not trying to steal your thunder, but it's story time with Dean now, and I'm going to take you back 20 years here to two guys that played on the Red Deer Rebels on a championship team. One was Boyd Gordon, one was Joel Stepp. One of them had a pretty good NHL career, and Brent, I remember Brent Sutter telling both of them, if you play this way, you can further your career. And Joel Stepp had all kinds of speed. I think maybe he tried to be a bit more of a goal scorer, where Boyd Gordon just knew what his niche and what his effectiveness was going to be. And sometimes players put themselves in round holes as square pegs. And Boyd knew what he needed to do to get to the NHL, and he got there. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for Joel as much. And it just kind of goes to show you that once you figure out what you do well, that's probably a faster path to where you want to get to, as opposed to trying to be something you're not.
Well, Dean, perfectly said, and you steal my thunder when you speak that eloquently and so perfectly. Steal my thunder every single time because it's very well said. It's really interesting too. I go to the U17 every year. I go to the U17. There's over 100 kids in a particular birth year, and they've all been drafted in the CHL, first and second round picks, maybe some later round picks, not very many, but and I go there, Dean. And I can tell you this, I go there and I can, if it's 105 or it's 100, I can tell you why every single one of those players was drafted high in the CHL. I can tell you why. It's very obvious why. But now what you got to do is you got to adjust to a higher level. You got to adjust to playing against older players under more demanding circumstances. And what gave you success to get to that point? It could be great skating. It could be great offensive ability. It could be size and every one of those things. But the challenges now are going to be different, and they're going to be more significant. And how you adjust to them and how you recognize, okay, that's something I used to be able to do. I'm not going to be able to do that here anymore. And players struggle with that. Dean, you know, when you have coaches that can impress upon you what your strengths are and what can be developed, it's not that they're trying to tell you not to be something more or not to expand your game, but you can only expand your game once the strengths and the foundation of your game are in order, and you got to bring those every single game. And for players, it's not that they're stubborn or they don't want to do that, but that adjustment, that progress of understanding, okay, this is my game. Maybe this is what I did really well previously, but I can't do that forward. That's all part of the maturation. And some players take a little bit longer to get it. Some players never get it, and some players get it really immediately. But again, it's just, I can understand when you've been so good at something for so long and trying to adjust to it, that can be a difficult challenge.
Yeah, and those other leagues we talked about before are full of those players as well. Unfortunately, it's you know, and a lot of NHL guys, they get to the NHL and then they have to adapt as their career. You know, Brent Sutter even had to adapt as his career changed as well. So it's always a learning process, I think. And I always learn so much on this show from you, Craig. So thank you so much. I look forward to hearing you and Muddy on the World U18s next week. And we're going to chat with you from Texas. I know you're going to be so happy to go back where you won a Stanley Cup. The only thing better is if you could wear a Michigan hat while you're there as well, and maybe we'll see that. So I definitely want you to have a lot of fun, and I can't wait to chat next week, Craig.
Hey, I can't wait either, and I will have a Michigan hat on next week with my Stanley Cup ring. Count on it.
I love it.
This is a serious message.
Craig Button joins us on the Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports Hotline. Become a scout and make money while providing prospects to the Ultimate Franchise Hockey League.
What you talking about, mister?
Pay that man his money.
I'm your huckleberry. Check out the details at www.uffsports.com.
It's serious.
I like it a lot.
I said we got to win it.
UFFS. You own the game.
All right, that was fun. And if you were unclear, Craig thinks Conor Bedard's a pretty good player and will be on this team as well. But you know, there are, you know, it's good to discuss those things. You know, does a guy that's that young, if he can help, not just fit in anywhere? And if you're a team sport athlete, you shouldn't care who gets the glory as long as you get the championship at the end of the day. And you know, we've had some examples of that as well. So I did story time. Most of the time, Craig does story time. We'll do that at the end of this season after the draft. We'll do story times and scouting trips. So you can email me for that, trackingthedraft@gmail.com, and you can join in the fun with this show. All right, that is going to wrap things up for another episode, but I want to direct you to uffsports.com. It is the future of fantasy sports, so make sure you check that out and get in the game where you own the game. Also, I mentioned we're broadcasting on the UFSN, Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. This show, as you know, comes out Wednesdays. Friday, we have UFHL Now. UFFS podcast every second Sunday. Fantasy Hockey Time soon to be wrapping up and we'll be morphing into a baseball show. And 2 Minute Tuesday with Darren Bates. You can find all of that on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network YouTube page. And if you're looking for other great shows, check out podcastalley.ca, Tracking the Draft page, as well as other fun podcasts that you might enjoy. You can also get in touch with me there on Podcast Alley if you'd like to join the show as an advertiser. For Craig Button, I'm Dean Millard. This has been Tracking the Draft, where the stars of tomorrow are discovered. Have a great week and enjoy the U18s.